'Cause it wouldn't move in the same way.
Why aren't you guys happier impossible to explain? Like, why?
Because it's not.
I don't think it's impossible. Like the way that the stars move that correlate with a magnetic field, the way the magnetic field functions that we can replicate on Earth, that is actually an explanation for how the stars are moving. It doesn't mean that proves it or validates it, but it is an explanation. Now, what the map is, yeah, I would have no way to claim that. I don't think any of us do, unless we've put a whole team together. Or if you want to go off other authorities and go off what they have. But in terms of independently, that's a whole other story. But the stars themselves can be explained, the motion of them. But the actual map and how everything is laid out, I think if we're all intellectually honest, none of us independently have that. And that's what would need to be really known, to know the actual layout of the ground in comparison to that sky.
Yeah, you can measure the ground, can't you? I mean, the land part, that can be measured.
Yeah, absolutely.
But not the water. You can't measure the water, and you can't.
You can measure water too. If anyone could try to measure curved water at the rate that the
it's got a
government model.
There's a current to the water, so you can't measure distance on the water. But you can measure the distance on the land, and you can map the land, right? We all know that.
Have you heard my idea?
Have
you heard my idea on the ocean where you could drop an anchor and then you could measure a distance and then drop another anchor, so you can measure distance by tracking on the ground over the ocean by dropping anchors and measuring distance on the base of the ocean floor
between the anchors. Measuring the distance between the anchors.
From anchor to anchor, yeah.
From where?
10 years. 10 years, you said, and you haven't got a team together. If we got a team together, you said 10 years.
Well,
no, that's not what I said.
Been
that's
sounded,
not what I said. I said that's a way to measure by dropping. Yes. No, I said for anyone to ever map the entire Earth, first of all, you would have to get a major team together. But for anyone to measure distance with that method, there's other ways to do it too, with like laser range finding and maybe with drones. I hear what you're saying though. With the currents in the ocean, it is very difficult to measure with the currents. If that's what you're saying.
In the air as well, right? You can't measure the distance in the air, can you?
Well, you can, but I mean, there's different ways. That's what we're gonna have to do, though. There's a lot of things that need to be done in the air. So
when you say you can't know the truth of this until we get a team together and do it ourselves or do it independently, I agree. You can learn things that way. But when you make the statement that you could use somebody else's knowledge that they've gathered it, like you must not use GPS then because you didn't make your own GPS. So how could it be trusted? Like what level is that applied to, celestial observations? I don't understand why you would use a GPS you've never made, but not trust the findings for celestial stuff.
Well, I don't know why if you're assuming I don't trust GPS, that's not true. I trust and use GPS all the time because that's in local streets and areas that are, on kind of civilian land and all of that. Where I would start to question GPS is like out in the oceans, deep in the oceans, and distances in those ways. But in terms of in local areas, yeah, I trust GPS, no problem at all. That's not an issue. I'm not saying trust my life on it. I want to know what I'm doing and know my own path as well. But it's very useful.
Turn into the water.
That's kind of a whole separate topic. But yeah.
Well, that was my. I don't know. It's that you do trust GPS, but you've never found out the accuracy of it. But like the fact that it does work, you trust it. That's why astronomy. And you could use celestial navigation and get where you're going. So when you do that, and it comports with the globe models, it's the same thing as trusting GPS. You trust globers for this, but not for that.
No, but Demon Stride, this is the difference, though, for real, bro. Imagine this. You have the hemisphere of stars that we see. The difference is this, tiny bit of curvature that the globe claims is there. You know what I mean? Could you agree with me with that? That at the end of the day, from what we see, because usually we're only seeing a few miles. I know in some conditions you can see further. But would you agree that at the end of the day, it's really it's the same hemisphere of stars in different areas, but it's just that little bit of curve that's claimed to be there with the globe?
Well, I don't think you see a full hemisphere of stars from the surface. So I think the the scale of the thing is hard to comprehend, especially when we start using words and trying to fix them. Like, I don't think you're even seeing half the sky when you look up.
Well, dude, have you ever been anywhere like on like somewhere like where even if you're on like an island or something where you can see ocean 360 degrees around you in all
At least
directions?
180. No, just at least off of what it calls.
You've only seen like like off like a coast where it's only like 3/4 or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you said if we got a team together, we ought to be able to work this out. And my observation was that 10 years and nobody's got a team together. And then you talked about measuring this distance over water with anchors. And so I don't know how many you need for that team, or if that's as far as you've got in kind of
How would
some
you even?
idea of measurement or something. Seems a bit vague.
Well, it's one way to measure across the ocean. So if we want to measure from like South America over to New Zealand, and then from New Zealand to Australia, to South America, or sorry, South Africa is what I meant. From Australia to South Africa, and then from South Africa to South America.
So describe that method with your anchor method then. How would you do that?
Well, I mean, we've talked about like a two-pronged approach. First of all, have drones with laser rangefinders on them in short distances that can be looped. So you get a fairly decent measurement that way, even though it's not, exactly precise, but it does give a good estimate with just, drones with laser rangefinders that are in close enough distance where you wouldn't have any major refraction. They're quite accurate. And then just do a daisy chain. So you're doing that. Meanwhile, yeah, you could drop anchor, have a certain distance, go that distance, drop another anchor, go back, get your original anchor, and then keep looping them. Now you could do 3 at a time, 4, depending on how straight you want to go. And you can measure from the ocean floor. Now that does get complex if the ocean floor gets very deep. It gets complex. So yeah, there's more to that. But it is one way. But I think even with the laser rangefinders with drones, or even just taking the trip and mapping it with the sky, because if you actually know how to use the sky, you can see how fast you're moving across the ground as you go. And we just need like we need kind of a rough estimate of that distance because of the differences.
How rough? I mean, how rough? Because you're
are.
only looking for a small amount if you're looking for, flat or curve. So, you've got to be pretty precise because that'll do kind of measurements may well fit in somebody else's, paradigm. There you go. That's where it is. It's in your error.
Yeah, so those two things, measuring by dropping anchor on the ocean floor, and the other one is using laser rangefinders with either on the boat with drones, or just from the boats, laser rangefinders, just to double check everything along the way.
Well, how would you measure the distance between the anchors, you think?
Well, yeah, see, that's the thing. You have to know your depth of the ocean floor. So if you have good equipment that you can get that, which, you can these days with sonar and everything, to be able to get the depth, because that would have to be calculated in. But if you had a measure, like a certain a cable or a chain or a rope that was a certain distance, and you knew, 1 mile or whatever it is, that when you get there, you hit it, and then.
That's presuming that your anchor is, like a plumb bob, isn't it?
I mean, you know how they have like they say they have all the fiber optic cables under the ocean floors, like, between Spain and New York. So, how did they do well, I know how they did. I mean, it's what is that called? Gravimetry, where they do the ocean floor mapping. So, I mean, they've done all that because to lay all those fiber optic cables, they had to know their distances and everything,
They just rolled it out, and when the reel got out to the end, they connected another bit on and rolled out another reel.
You think so? And they just shot out and just hope they got.
No, they didn't. No, you can't. You can't join fiber optics. You've got to actually manufacture them on the boat as you're laying them. So they didn't just plug it in like you do a VGA monitor. It's got to be manufactured on the ship.
Thanks for clarifying that. Yeah. Thanks for adding some detail to the connection. That's fine, but they had to connect it one way or another.
Yeah, that's the biggest issue with fiber optics is the connection issue.
All right, this does work though, does it?
Oh, we presume so. We're talking to each other through these cables, so I guess they do.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Yeah. You guys are some of the coolest people on earth to talk with. I'll say that. So cheers to all of you.
Likewise, Gio, and to everyone in the room.
Seems there's a lot of impossible stuff.
like the moon landing.
That's possible. So, Gio, so you said that we can know where we are using the sky, right?
Yep, absolutely. So what you can do is you can take a freeze frame of the sky. So let's say you want to do it at 3 in the morning, 3 a.m. So at 3 a.m., that's your freeze frame. That's your snapshot. And every day you have to adjust that by 4 minutes because the sidereal day is 23 hours and 56 minutes and 4 seconds. So you need to adjust for that. So if you adjust the 3 minutes and 56 seconds for that, then you can get the exact same snapshot every night. So if you get the same snapshot every night, as you're traveling, you can take your angles to stars and see how fast you're actually traveling upon the ground. Because you have the same snapshot of stars, they're not moving. You just have to adjust it every night if you want to see it every night. And yes,
How
that
do you
is
know
one
you're
way.
traveling in a straight line?
That would have to do with
Well,
your lat longs in relation, the right ascension declination, which is essentially like the latitude and longitude of the sky. They call it right ascension declination. So as you move on the ground, you relating where you are in relation to your right ascension declination of the sky. If you have that freeze frame, that's what's mapped to the ground. Your right ascension declination and the sky relationship is what you're actually moving on the ground in your latitude and longitude.
so what
That's a
makes you think
circle,
we
isn't
don't
it?
know the distances between these continents?
Well, they're in question in the south. The distances in the south, not really in the north. The south is what's in question. The distances. It's a huge,
But the
huge
stars,
issue that's been outstanding for years and years within this. So it just needs to be verified.
Distances across the ground.
I've not heard of that.
Yeah, between the continents
Oh,
specifically.
continent.
What's the difference? Like, well, how is it so different in the north and the south? Like, isn't the methodology exactly the same?
Well, you tell me. Yeah, I was gonna post something.
I would say it is, yeah.
Like the distance between verticals.
Here, this was something actually.
Similar to that.
I was watching that Flat Earth Roundtable, that thing, and I actually saw David Weiss had posted this, so I actually grabbed this screenshot. Check out how in the north they use this plane, the Boeing 777-300ER, that has a range of 13,000 kilometers. Then the Boeing 787-9 has a range of 15,000 kilometers. And the high speed is also way higher on the one in the south that has the higher range. It has it's like an extra 300 miles per hour more top speed. So if they're really equal, why are they using such dramatically different model planes that have different ranges and top speeds?
Do
And
they
also
use that
it shows,
plane every time that they fly to the south? Do they have to use that kind of plane?
that's a good question. I mean, this is one example that he that was pulling. The other thing is that apparently the flight in the north is actually longer, and they're using the range that's less. That's another thing about this one. But yeah, I hear you. Yeah,
Does
is it
the
in every case?
equidistant
It's a good
map
point.
that you were using earlier get rid of that though? You had an azimuthal equidistant and an azimuthal equiarea. Doesn't that get rid of that sort of thing where the distances are equal? Isn't that the whole point of those maps?
Could
I
be.
mean, it may sound contradictory because it's circular, but the idea of the equidistant, isn't that? I mean, I was trying to get earlier for you to explain that to everybody because I'm not so sure people understand the principles of the azimuthal, equidistant, and equiarea. Can you explain that?
Well, it's just basically these are just different azimuthal projections. Because if you take the sky, above a planar surface, if you take the sky like hemispheres, multiple of them, different hemispheres, even with a planar foundation, you can still theoretically map that into a sphere, which is why they call it a celestial sphere. Even though it is just hemispheres above, it can still just be hemispheres above the ground. But they take that, the fact that you can
Like
map
there's
it like
more
a
than
sphere,
one.
and then they turn that into the celestial sphere. What were you saying?
You say hemispheres as though there's more than one.
Well, just different positions.
Different positions on the hemisphere. or different positions of the hemisphere? I'm not quite following.
Well, for example, if you have a planetarium, one of these really advanced planetariums where it's a digital screen, and they can just, with a touch of a computer, they can pull up the latitude and longitude. So the sky has like the idea of like right ascension declination, which is like the latitude and longitude of the sky. Anywhere that you look in the sky is going to have the right ascension and declination of that position. So you could sit in one of those advanced planetariums and just skim through and say, hey, I want to put myself here. I want to put myself there. And you could, just like you can with Stellarium, you can jump around and then you can see these different portions of the sky. Now,
latitude and longitude perpendicular to one another.
Technically only at a point. Yeah,
Perpendicular,
but not as you
point.
travel. Yeah, but as you travel.
When you say technically, what do you mean by that?
Well, just to say from before, though,
mathematically, that's impossible. What you're talking about, but
all right, we could go into that. Let me just say one thing about the azimuthals is azimuth projections. All I was going to say is that it has to do with the celestial sphere and how that is projected into the sky, and then what assumptions are brought. So if they then assume a globe Earth, they can try to claim the sky is surrounding it and explain it that way. Either way, these azimuthal projections are taking the layout of the continents and then focusing that azimuth grid system in different layouts.
Equal distance to the lights in the sky.
Well, you'd agree that at least
onto a land map.
In relation to how the ground links to the lights in the sky, yes, ultimately.
What's the equal
latitude and longitude.
Where's the equal distance where it's equal?
Well, that's when they do it, when they put it at the equator, if that's what you're talking about, the equal area azimuthal. Because you were just asking, because the thing is that that's just taking the grid system and putting different azimuth projections, from that initial grid system, which is from the celestial sphere. It's not really from the globe Earth. It's not really from a globe Earth. People will say that. It's actually from the celestial sphere, which is not necessarily some kind of physical sphere in that sense. It is the way that the sky maps to the ground.
Well, the azimuthal, as we all know, right? That's a horizontal plane. Then
yeah,
the equidistant part of it is relating what to what in how are they equal distances in the understanding of, because we already know what the azimuthal is, right? That's the horizontal plane. So where's the equal distance in the circle idea? Because they're always circular, aren't they? Azimuthal, equidistant. You're saying it's got something to do with the lights in the sky, the equal distance as shown on the circular land map. But you can't measure a distance to a light in the sky. So where's the equal distance? It's not an angular distance, is it? Because
from the center.
Yeah, the angle. As it
for example, you know how a sundial, you have to point the gnomon of the sundial to essentially Polaris, so at a different angle depending on your latitude for a sundial to work. So that's an example through the whole spectrum of that, essentially like a hemisphere, which is mapped out above the ground. So, from Polaris, you have to take that angle in order for a sundial to even work.
So where's the equal distance, though, right? The angle, let's say.
Real quick, like this right here, I just posted it real quick. So that gnomon, if that was 38 degrees, you have to point that thing. If that's where you are, you have to point that thing at 38. So, yeah, the equidistant from the center would be that if you took the sundial and you went, 1,000 miles south or 1,000 miles north, etc., that angle is going to change.
Equally, though. It's a massive component within mathematics, the idea of equal.
Well, then we get into 1 degree for 60 nautical miles from there. Yeah, claims, of how that whole spectrum. But who's really gone all the way to the north and all the way to the south and measured every degree? I'd like to see every degree measured from the whole spectrum. Never been done.
Well, a degree is always equal, right? Even no matter where you measure it, because you're measuring it from one line to another. That can't be the equal that an azimuthal equidistant map is talking about, right? So you don't know?
Yeah, I mean, you also have the azimuth all the way 360 degrees around you. So
You always have the azimuthal. I mean, that's where you set up any tools, right? If you set up a telescope, theodolite, auto level.
do you think you have to use 360, or do you think there's other ways to break up a circle? What do you think on that 360 number? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, deal in right angles, right? Most of the stuff is right angles, and I mean, you deal with pi as well, don't you? Pi radians. So there are other ways of dealing with that. It's just the breaking up of the whole.
Yeah, exactly.
Because when you got 12,000 miles earlier, where did that come from? 6,200 and then about 12,000. Is that connected to this equidistance somehow?
Yeah, it is. And it's connected to the 1 degree per 60 nautical miles as well. That's
So
what it breaks down to.
So what's
celestial
that
sphere.
focused on to get that 12,000 miles?
Well, one here, I'll post this if you've seen this. Gleam made this. It's just kind of a basic thing. I'm not necessarily trying to completely assert this is exactly everything. However, if you take a look at that and if you zoom in over on the left there, you'll see the 1 degree per 60 nautical miles. Now, you could assume from left to right on the foundation there, that would be like a horizontal planar, surface, as it were. Or I know Bev doesn't like the word planar because I hear what Bev's saying with that. Bev, I don't really disagree with some of the stuff you were saying earlier. Yeah, the word planar is, but it does have, like, in a more colloquial sense, I think it has usage because everybody knows, like, if you have a table that's generally, if you said, they even have a tool, like a planer, the tool, a planer. So
yeah, wood plane.
Yeah, exactly. So it planes it off. Anyway, so if you have that as a foundation, but yeah, the 1 degree per 69, and ironically, it makes a curved visual matrix.
1 degree to what though?
Per 60 nautical miles. So if you look over to the left there, you'll see how the 60. If you look at the very bottom,
1 degree. 1 degree to what?
6214. So that's all the way from 0 degrees to 90 degrees, 69 miles per degree to get 6,214. So you're asking where it comes from?
Yeah, where did you measure the degree?
That's the 6214, which is very close to the 6210.
But where did
That's
you
what they
measure
claim
the
on
angle? The 1
the
degree.
mainstream model claims. The mainstream model claims. Hold on, the mainstream globe model today, they claim that 6210 or 6214, right in that range, is the ground distance between the equator and the North Pole, or the equator and the South Pole on their globe. So they use it for that.
So your 12,000 miles is centered on the North Pole. Is that what you're saying?
No, the 12,000 is half of the. Well, they claim the circumference at the equator distance is 24,901. So 12 is like half of that, which is half of the globe, quote unquote, or half of the plane, as it were, half of the Earth that's lit up.
So a plane, you said. So you're talking about 12,000 miles of planar Earth.
Oh, it's much more than that, but that you're seeing.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, that's if their distance
12,000 miles.
Hold on, that's if their distance they claim is correct of the 24,901, which is roughly almost 25. which is about
Well, you
12,500.
was correct.
If that's correct, which is the
I thought
62.
you were claiming it was correct.
No, I'm just saying that's what they claim the circumference is. So from that, the 6210, there's a couple different things. I don't know. The 6210, I
So,
just showed where
when
that comes from. That's
you
one
measure
place.
1 degree, when you measure 1
Optical.
degree, do you believe it's 69 miles or not?
It's not really a matter of believing. I have not gone out through the entire spectrum and seen every single amount that it drops. So, however, there's a lot of geometries that relate to that 60 nautical miles, the 1 in 60 rule. So that's a
I'm
whole
trying
topic.
to imagine what you're presenting. That's all. This planar Earth that's 12,000 miles across from a center point that's measured in
that's
1
what you can
degree
see,
angles.
so it'd
Hang
be
on,
much
hang
more
on,
than
hang
that.
on, hang on. You always do this. And then you're telling me it's me. In 1 degree angles per 69 miles to get a total of 6.2 in one direction from the North Pole and 6.2 the other is 12,000 miles. You have a 12,000 mile circle. Right, of planar Earth. And I wonder
I'm not
where
really
the
referring
next,
to the ground.
the
We were just
next
talking about
circle
what
comes
you see
to
in the
that
sky.
interconnects with that. Where's the next circle that interconnects with that circle to extend that plane?
Yeah, we were just talking about. You were just asking some of the math, and I mean that's where they derive it on the globe model today, the one that is being passed as true to the mainstream population. That's 62. Because when you're at the equator, Polaris starts to disappear. Like you'll no longer see Polaris, and that happens at about this 6,200 mile area there. So
and that relates to your first hemisphere of the sky.
no, I'm not really claiming hemispheres of
Between
skies.
the
I'm just
zenith of
relating to, I'm just talking
Polaris
about what we
and the
observed.
equator. Yeah, but you just described 12,000 miles of planar Earth, centered from the North Pole, with a 1 degree measurement of angle measurement, moving away from Polaris. And that's where you got to the equator, and then you ran out of Polaris. And then somewhere that plane must extend with another hemisphere of the sky.
Hold on, Stefan. Okay.
With a different center point to connect the next bit of the planar Earth to.
No, I don't think I don't
saying?
think I said any of that. I didn't say any of that. But
No,
we
that's
can
what
get
I'm
back
saying.
to
I'm
whatever
trying
you
to
guys want to
imagine
get back
it,
to. Oh, you're
trying
saying
to
it. Okay.
imagine how you extend the
Okay,
plane
then I'll hear
beyond
your
the
idea.
equator. It's not
Okay,
a
say it
valid
again.
question. How you extend the plane beyond the equator, given that you've got the first part from the North Pole to the equator by measuring angles to Polaris. Then how do you extend the next bit where you haven't got Polaris? How do you extend the planar Earth beyond the equator? What star do you use, or what point do you use to draw another circle?
The southern crux and Sigma Octantis, the southern rotation.
So that's the total of flat Earth that operates between just those 2 points. Then 2 points of
I didn't
rotation.
say anything about flat Earth. I didn't even use that term once.
Well, planar Earth. Let's say planar Earth. How do they connect these two circles? Where one is centered on Sigma Octantis and the other one is centered on Polaris. The two circles. Where do they meet? Where's the bridge we cross into the the southern part, the Sigma Octantis plane?
Well, I would love to be able to explore the Earth more thoroughly, but when we're in the north, we can see the sun at the Tropic of Cancer. We then see it go to the equator.
Impossible, would you say?
And then we see it go to the Tropic of Capricorn every year. They meet at the equator. Now, if you're talking about what happens if you were to go to like the south and keep going, or to the north, like you're talking about traveling over the poles, basically, is what they call them, like those regions, or what are you referring to? They meet at the equator, if that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, but how can they? Where do they meet, and how? Two circles meet. One that's centered on Sigma Octantis, and the other one centered on Polaris, like you just said.
Visually, yep, in the sky, in terms of those two rotational areas. That's why when you're at the equator, you see 50-50, like this right here, this one where you see, there's a straight line at the center and then there's converging and diverging. But if you were to take this shot and then just turn your camera down to the horizon, you would see like a 180-degree rotation of the whole star field. And then if you were to look north, you would see another, the 180 degree. So you're seeing half of it. You're seeing the whole half of the sphere, like 50-50 of it, which is why in something like this, like this was posted earlier, that's sort of like what you'd see at the equator, the straight line stars like that, converging and diverging. If you were to put stars on that little hemisphere, and then you would see the two rotations simultaneously, but you'd see half of them because you're halfway through. You're halfway in the middle.
So at some point on a planar Earth, the rotations are straight lines at some place too.
Yeah, at the equator, yeah. Meaning if you put a stick in the ground right at the equinox when the sun, which just happened a little bit ago, but when the sun rises, that shadow would show that it is tracking over the sky in a straight arc.
And what about
And then when it starts
the
going
rotation
south,
then?
and then when it starts going south of the equator, it arcs going. That's why the southeast and southwest rising and setting. So it goes the other way.
How do you account for the parts that aren't included in the rotation?
I mean, the sun just basically does the same thing the stars do. That kind of clockwise and counterclockwise.
Yeah, well, 2 points of rotation, opposing directions.
See, I just find it. I love like the fact that you can take like a paddle and drag it through water, and you can get a clockwise and counterclockwise vortex. You'll see it right in the water just from dragging like either a wooden spoon or a paddle through water. So it's a very universal pattern. The way that even like the hurricanes kind of stir up on the north side and the south side of the sun, like in the north and south, like when during hurricane season. So yeah, that clockwise and counterclockwise is such a universal thing with it. It's also what a magnetic field does. So the fact that the sky does it just completely relates to the way nature works on the ground as well. So
you're expressing a hemispherical sky onto a planar Earth. That's what you're doing in order to get that. Different hemispheres, in fact.
you're seeing different portions of the larger field. So depending on where you are, you're seeing that particular dialed in portion of it. Depending on the time of year and your position. That's why it does relate to the ground in a consistent way that you can do celestial navigation. It's just that nobody's really done like a full grid mapping of like multiple circles of equal altitude with elevations to stars to really be able to show.
To the east and the west then? Are there east and west rotations as well? It goes out east and west on that planar projection you were showing? Was it only a north-south direction that extends?
Yeah, I mean, if you animate, like in a planetarium, if you pull up the stars for your local area and then you animate it, just like you can with Stellarium, you'll see how the stars all move in that hemispherical region, and then you can see how that all fits together into a larger grid. If you have a lot of data like we do now, you can then see how it actually maps out when you put it all together. Yeah, you can pull it up for anywhere on Earth. Like you could even have a planetarium in an area. You pull up inside the planetarium the stars for your actual latitude and longitude where you are. You could pull that up on the planetarium's screen. Then you could walk out. Then you could walk outside and see the same thing, and then walk back inside and see where in the planetarium, and then walk back outside and see the real thing, and they would match.
I'm just trying to wonder how two planar circles meet together.
Antipodal for the win. Is that Nathan Oakley? Should get together.
get a team together, work it out.
Yeah, I think there's a timing to everything. So, because the next level of something that would actually shake the mainstream could end up changing the whole world eventually. So, for the better, but.
It starts with the impossibility, doesn't it?
We see how this right here shows an electric field, but then the one on the right, which is like a ferrocell with ferrofluid and so on. I'm not saying, like I said before, it doesn't prove anything, and I know it's kind of just tapping back to what we're talking about, but that straight line with the two rotations and how that matches the sky, at least to a degree, it just shows that whatever the sky is doing, it matches other natural patterns on Earth, such as this, like with a magnetic field, for example. To where, however it is mapped, like however it is mapped on the Earth, we know that it's a phenomenon that's not outside of any of the realm in any way of existing. So
there's only one sun, isn't there?
I have never seen any evidence of any more than one sun. Yeah, and also like going back through all the traditions, like astrologically, there is the sun. So there's that too.
And that,
but I mean, there's
like,
some idea.
That magnetic thing is like a 3-dimensional, isn't it? It's only because you're looking at it on a plane that you're seeing it like that.
You have the sun and the moon, both of the same size of that hole.
Oh, I see. But the moon seems to rotate in the same way as the sun, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yep.
In the sky. I mean, say rotate. It follows.
Yeah, there's footage in 2021 of a solar eclipse at the Union Glacier, Antarctica, where those guys also went. But this is back in 2021 of a solar eclipse at Union Glacier in December. And when this happened, the sun was in the south. So the sun and the moon in the same position in the sky. Now, I'm not saying the moon is what causes those solar eclipses. However, they are in the same position. Like you see the moon getting closer, and then you don't see the moon because it's a new moon phase. So you never see the moon during a new moon. But we know it's there, in its position because it'll come out, from.
It was in the south of them when they were there to view it. So you did know that the sun went to the south of them.
Yeah. Yep. Long before they took their trip. Yeah.
So it wasn't at the north.
No, this one is at the south. I'll post it if you want.
And it was going anti-clockwise. Yeah,
here I'll post it. I'll grab it. It's it's classic. It's it's been known about. So now when I found this, the thing is this company is actually like you can even look up if you want, which I did this little journey, but I'll just post the video and then you can. There's a 360 cam one, and anyways, I'll just show a few. I'll just give you the one for the Eclipse one. So we had looked into this way before, and none of us really could find anything that looked fake about it when we were analyzing it multiple times on the live stream. But yeah, it is a solar eclipse, and Witsit was even in here. We were looking at it. Even Witsit agreed. He's like, yeah, well, he's like, it doesn't really look. So he already knew about it as well. All right, that's the video. So that's the 360-degree one, which means you can actually pan that all around. So basically, all these guys, if you look at that video, all these guys, Bev, all these guys set up with their cameras. This is roughly, I think, around the same places that McToon and those guys were. Because I think that if you do the 360 cam and you scan it around, you can see the blue building. Now, this is in 2021, and there was a total solar eclipse. It was aligned here. You see the sun in the south there above that mountain. And then as you watch that video, it's 9 minutes. But as you watch it, you'll see there's the solar eclipse. And anyways, so with this video, and we analyzed this and have known about this. There's also another footage of this same eclipse all the way from the Chilean camp, which is all the way over on the other side of the mountain. They call it the Chilean camp. I've learned too that there's 2 camps actually here. So there's the Chilean camp and then the main camp. So I also have footage, I could post that too actually, a video from the other side of the mountain of the same eclipse that shows it from over there. And that's the sun and the moon in the south at 80 degrees
Sun's
south.
going from right to left in the picture, and it is south of them. They're looking south.
Yes, exactly. Yep.
Isn't that what Jaren couldn't get a grip on the model that he had?
Yep. That's the one.
Why do you think Jaren has flipped so violently, if you will? Like an apostate.
I know, it's pretty wild. Here's the other one from the Chilean camp real quick. So anyone wants to take a look at that. It's only a 1-minute video, but it does show about halfway through. It kind of shows the eclipse happening. I think that one's a lot darker. So when we were first looking at this, like, wow, that one really does look different. But anyways, oh yeah, the Jaren thing. Yeah, wow, there's a lot that could be said. But definitely kind of wild to see that happen. But he's just very different than he used to be, is what I'll say. Because I've always been sort of neutral on Jaren. I mean, I did meet him 3 times in person, but that was back in like 2017 and 18 at those meetups and things like that. Yeah, so I've met him like 3 times total back then, but I've never really had any communication with him since then, like in any messages or anything like that. So I've always been kind of neutral on him overall. It was nice talking to him in person. He was a cool guy. We were talking about, doing like high altitude balloon tests with drones and stuff. I mean, we had good conversations. But anyways, if others want to get in, I know I've been kind of chatting a lot, but this is a big topic.
Witsit had seen this particular solar eclipse.
Yep, on this live stream, we went over all these with Witsit here, and he even kind of corrected people because people were saying, "Oh, the sun's not in the south," and he was like, "No, it is," and then people went back and looked. So yeah, no, Witsit knew about these. Also, I found there is a 24-hour sun footage from Union Glacier. Have you seen that one, Bev? The one I found?
No, I mean, I already knew it's been known about for years, right? They developed a model because of these very things, I think.
So why were Witsit and Jaren surprised then to see something they already knew existed?
All right, so I just took the minute to screenshot this. I mean, I'll still be here, but I mean, I can step back a little because I know, like, it's kind of been like well, anyways, okay, I've just been kind of.
You're the guy in the know. Come on, you've talked to Jaren, and you've
okay. So no, let me just.
Witsit.
So when these guys were gonna go, no, I have not talked to Jaren ever, but I have talked to Witsit because he's been in here. But ever since I met,
talked to him a few times. I know not about this, right?
No, I met Jaren 3 times back in like 2017. I met him 3 times, but since then I have never talked to him since then. But anyways, let me just post this video. Okay, this is the finale. So when these guys were gonna go on this trip, I'll just make this real brief. I decided, hey, I'm gonna go dig around and see what I can find. So I started going to YouTube, Venmo, not Venmo, but what's the one with the V? Vimeo. And I was just starting to search Union Glacier. Now I could share the full story. Bev, I've gone over it a bunch, but nonetheless. But at the end of a lot of digging, I found this video, and it's from like a skydiving company. They only have about 600 subscribers, 700. Now I just got the timestamp for you as well. So I had found this well before they took their trip. Now there's actually 2 shots of the sun in the south in this, but if you go to the timestamp there at the very end of the video, it is 2 shots with a 360-degree camera of the 24-hour sun. So this is well before they went. I showed this to Witsit. Witsit said that he sent it to Jaren. So as far as I know, Witsit said he sent it to Jaren, but I did share it with Witsit because I found this. As far as I know, I was the only one who found this, and I just found it from digging, and it was at the end of the video because I was going through videos and skimming through, a few minutes at a time, and then that's the only reason I caught it. And it was kind of like at the end of the night, I was about to go to bed, and then I caught that. So, anyways, yeah, that's a 24-hour sun footage. The only other one that I know of that anyone that I'm aware of that knows of that exists, other than the ones that those guys got when they went there from Union Glacier specifically. So,
surely Whitsitt would have told Jaren about this observation of the sun going in the opposite direction since 2021. I mean, Jaren seems to have been really surprised about it, but seems like you guys knew about it. Whitsitt knew about it. He seems to be surprised that it happened as well when he went there. He already knew about it, it seems.
yeah, I mean, we went over this video many times on the live stream here before we went, and really no one could really pick out anything that's outwardly fake about it. You can even see that the time lapse, all the people going to their tents and running around. I mean, of course, things could be faked. It's not like nothing could be, but anyways, I'm just saying this is kind of a piece of the history, just that this kind of, that I'd already found 24-hour sun footage before they even went there, just from digging and kind of looking through and looking for it. So, yeah, I mean,
where it's going to land with all this, eh? All right.
I was already telling Whitsitt he was going to see it and all that stuff too, and he pretty much knew he was going to at that point. Yeah, so especially after, Jaren. Jaren released a video. Did you guys see before they went? Jaren released a video that was like, "Will we see the 24-hour sun or not? The debate will finally beat arrest." Dun, dun, dun. You can go still see it on his channel probably. This dramatic video that Jaren released right before he went. And I'm thinking, is this really Jaren's mindset? He thinks that this one thing is going to be the finale. And now looking back on it all, I mean, whatever the case is, there's definitely some kind of a unfolding of a narrative. Whether Jaren's just writing it or whatever something else is going on, I don't know. But it definitely seems like there's an unfolding like that of some sort.
There's lots of preparations for rebranding, before they went there. But so I wonder kind of where Whitsitt's going to land with it. Whether he's going to touch it anymore, or he's just going to go on to more general kind of debate kind of things and leave it, because I don't know how he's going to deal with it. Considering he knew it before he went, it's a bit odd.
I thought Whitsitt was your man here, Gio. He certainly made this his home for quite a while, right? Sort of learned his trade, if you will, talking to the people in this server.
It's not been around for a while. I guess somebody might jump in his shoes, perhaps, and take off, carry on where he left off, maybe. I thought nobody knew about it before they went to Antarctica. Didn't think anybody, still saying no, it's impossible. And now it's been done. It seems it's impossible to explain.
I think the new line
most of us in the server here knew that it was going to happen.
So you knew in this server, most of you, that there was a 24-hour sun in the south that went in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Of course.
Gio
I mean,
put in a lot of work.
I find it surprising that nobody's come up with some kind of, good explanation. I thought, you were off. You'd got a head start. You had time to kind of, explain it rather than ignore it or.
You've been sleeping on that brown earth, haven't you?
Rational explanation for it.
Well, the stars do that as well.
Impossible.
Well, the stars do it as well. So it's not in terms of that. The stars do the clockwise, counterclockwise, if you want to say that, and the sun does clockwise and counterclockwise 6 months apart. It's the same general motion, is what I'm saying, because the stars
they're your fixed points for your flat Earth, aren't they? Your planar Earth. They
I'm just talking about
around
whatever
those two
the sky
fixed
is.
points that you've
Whatever
got. One was Polaris, and the other one's Sigma Octantis. They're your rotational points for planar Earth. So, we know you use those.
Yeah, so if you're looking at
sun relates to it a bit differently.
If you're looking at the southern rotation, let's say like Sigma Octantis and the southern crux, you're looking at that southern rotation. If you were to go to 23.4 degrees north from the equator, looking south, that would be where the Tropic of Capricorn is. That's as far as the sun gets when it's in the summer for the south. Now that is rotating around Sigma Octantis. Therefore, when the sun gets to that point, it is also going to rotate around Sigma Octantis, because it does. The Tropic of Capricorn is where the sun goes when it's the southern summer, at the peak of it, and
So
that is making circles. Those stars in the Tropic of Capricorn are making circles just like they all are in the south. Therefore, the sun is going to follow that same path that the stars do, like race cars
and a figure of 8 or something.
Well, I'm just saying what we empirically observe. I'm not trying to get into what overall. I mean, I'm just talking about well, in a way, you could say the northern and southern isn't 8, but it's 6 months apart. I guess you could make that kind of infinity symbol just because you have 2 rotations and the meeting place at the equator.
So is that where the sun crosses over in this figure of 8? Is that where the 2 circular planes meet together?
Well, I don't know that they're necessarily planar. You're saying the sky's planar now?
You described it as 12,000 miles of planar Earth from a center of the North Pole using Polaris, and then Sigma Octantis was the other center of rotation or point of rotation. So that's 2 circles, 2 planar circles.
I wouldn't really describe them as planar circles necessarily, but
you did though. You did.
No.
Yeah, you said they rotate. They're a rotation using Sigma Octantis or Polaris to describe that circle, that equator that is equidistant from the North Pole. Well, I assume that they're equidistant from whatever is on the ground for Sigma Octantis, whatever's the position there. That circle would be equidistant from there. So it's 2 circles that have to meet together, butt up against each other somehow. Well, that's all I can imagine, maybe.
Well, if you're talking about on the ground, if you have 2 rotational centers, then yeah, I hear what you're saying on the ground. But in terms of the sky, that would be more speculation if the sky is planar or exactly. I mean, we can see how we observe the sky. And then we were talking about some of those numbers, because if you break down the 1 degree per 69 miles, you end up with that 6210 number. And that's what we were just talking about before. So yeah, I'm just kind of talking about some of the general geometries of the sky and how it relates to the ground. Getting into the full modeling and different claims, that's a bigger topic, just because you'd have to be able to have a lot more information to get together, to really start to put.
Yeah, but we do have some information, don't we? We do have some information, and when you add those together, you kind of build a picture of it, even if it's only a personal one, because nobody wants to group together and say, they have any, common idea. Nobody ever wants to do that.
If you had the opportunity, would you feel a calling that you would want to do different experiments or tests or be on the cutting edge of this?
Yeah, if it mattered, if it mattered enough and I had time to do it, But I'm just, listening to what's been. I mean, people have spent 10 years at this. I haven't. I'm listening to 10 years of knowledge, supposedly. So I'm trying to draw from that at this point to try and get an idea about, what people see and what they say they've measured and what it actually is. And they say there's proof of these angles and 69 miles and 12,000
miles. Well, I can appreciate your. Sorry if I'm interrupting, but I can appreciate your inquisitive mind with that and asking questions.
Well, I think we're all going. That's how we got it, wasn't it? Inquisitive minds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
So that's what I'm trying to do, is trying to imagine. Because I said, when I first came along to this topic, it was to look at what the flat earthers were talking about, was to try and understand, because it seemed, it seemed odd from the outside. I hadn't really thought about it that much. I just thought, well, it'd be nice to know what they're talking about. So if somebody talks to me, because my neighbor used to talk to me about it, and I thought, well, I'm going to say, You know, I can only parrot what the world tells me. They're fucking mad. You know, that's all I'd heard. I didn't want to do that. So I thought, oh, I'll have a look. I'll just have a look just to get a kind of a overview to be able to say, oh, yeah, mate. Yeah, I get where you're coming from kind of thing. And then I found that there were a group of people who were offering me some proof of an experience that, you know, I could try and observe and see if that fit my experience. Because, you know, I started to look at it in a different way, a bit more focused, you know, I guess. And think, well, does that fit into my reality? How does that fit? And just ask some questions about it. So, you know, it was somebody offering me another model, basically. And then I began to sort of see some flaws in the model and think, well, I don't know. I don't want to take on another model if somebody's saying this other model was given to me in education and that's false. But here's another model that is true, and this is what they've been lying about. And I try and apply that and think, well, that doesn't fit. It doesn't make any sense. So I'm trying to make sense of it because I don't want to take it on just, you know, just like that and go, yeah, mate, you're right. Yeah. Because, you know, that's what I was told not to do. It's how people got to where they got to by questioning the conditioned, programmed idea they were given. Well, it does seem that some people have taken on another model that they've been given by other people too and haven't really questioned it. I don't want to do that. So, you know, that's all. It's just... And some people get really angry about it and have silenced me and what have you and banned me because I was just inquiring about these things that are anomalies, or maybe they're not. Maybe somebody could explain and say, no, look at it like this, you know, and I think about it and think, okay, I've got to shift the way I think about things and see things and understand things. And that's great. That's the benefit of it, is to have those things at the end of the day of an expanded knowledge, expanded awareness, greater consciousness. I thought that was the point, really, but seemingly not.
Well, maybe not
ElderBear.
for some, in some ways, but yeah, I mean, that's what it's all about in the end. I mean, if you can be okay to not knowing everything, then it puts you in a position of being open to knowing what is, and having that courage, I think, at times to just be okay with not knowing, to then get to what is. Because otherwise, if you jump on something prematurely, then you may not actually be getting to truth. Potentially, I'm not saying you. Obviously, I'm just saying in general. If people just leap to just kind of accepting something either from an authority or something like that, they could kind of give it away too quickly. And if they do that or taking that kind of leap, it could not be the truth. So just that idea of just being okay with not knowing and then just continually accepting new information until the larger picture comes together. And then, yeah, being able to advance like that and grow and learn seems like, in a way, it's like the fuel of life at some foundational level.
I just guess, you know, it's kind of found that the control was closer to home. It was actually still amongst the people who were saying, you know, watch out for those controlling us on the outside, the bigger they. I then found that there were people within the group who are the they too. You know, they're just repeating some thing that you must repeat. If you don't repeat it, then you're silenced. You know, if you don't agree, if you don't say it must be this way. The earth is measured flat. How? Fuck off. That's the answer. You know, eventually. I think, well, that's a bit odd to me. That sounds a bit controlling. Or the Earth's a sphere. You know, how? Fuck off. You know, it just seems a bit odd, really.
Yeah, like certain peoples in Africa, for example, like in certain tribes there, they don't they really don't kind of believe anyone or anything like that. They don't really make leaps if they don't know. Their philosophy, in a way, it's like they either know something or they don't know it. And if they don't know it, then they're okay just to say they don't know that yet. And then just therefore focus all their energy instead of just believing something and focusing their energy there. In this case, if they just accept they don't know it, now they can focus their energy to getting closer to knowing it. So it's like a more productive use instead of trying to defend a belief system that you don't really know and you're just trying to convince yourself you do and spinning your wheels with that. Actually free your mind to just accept that you don't know and then continue taking in more information until you do know. And then once you know, you know. It's kind of a interesting philosophy and way to look at it.
Yeah, I mean, as long as somebody doesn't set themselves up as some seer medicine man in a little hut in the corner and starts telling people that they've had a vision and that this is the truth and you must now believe this truth, I guess, that happens, I guess.
Like there's gurus in India, some of those, the unscrupulous ones.
Or in Discord, either. I mean, you said earlier, it seemed to kind of put some authority in that Whitsitt was here. Whitsitt saw it. Whitsitt said. Whitsitt agreed. Whitsitt put people right. Isn't that?
Well, he was on that trip, so that's why he was being mentioned. He took that. I mean, if that's what you're talking about in terms of the videos.
No, but 2021, you were talking about. That was before the trip, That because Whitsitt said, because Whitsitt, clarified that it gave it some extra authority. Like the seer in the hut in the corner.
No. We had found that
it's now gone away. I don't know. It's gone walkabout.
It was claimed to be. It happened in 2021, but we just found it like last year before they went on their trip, though. In terms of that, and then Whitsitt had known about it. Well, people were finding videos and stuff. So, if that's what you're saying, I mean, he was only. I'm not sure where we're going with the conversation now. What's the point? Yeah, he was mentioned because he took that trip. So yeah.
Well, it's sort of analogous to the seer in the hut in the corner of the village, who, because he said so, it clarifies it more. It gives it a bit more authority somehow.
Okay. Well, I mean, for me, I've actually never met Whitsitt in person, but I have known him to a degree. And, we were talking the other day in terms of that trip. If we're talking about that trip, who really can be trusted when you think about it? Because now what Jaren's done, and then you got Duffy and McToon, all those guys. So Whitsitt's kind of the only one that I think a lot of people in terms of that side of it. But there's a lot of evidence.
Circle, though, wasn't it? I mean, that was it. The whole thing was about it's letting Jaren see that sun circle, counter-rotational. That was the whole thing, but you apparently already knew about it. So you don't really need to trust them because you already knew about it.
Right, exactly. And them going did give some extra footage and things, but there's plenty of other evidence and footage of it, of that trip and that site.
There's a load of people that still deny it. A lot.
Well, a lot of people haven't even seen this other footage because I was just getting started. I have a bunch more too that I found. I mean, those were just a few that I posted earlier, but there's ones of them going up to Mount Vinson, and I've looked at the sun position up in Mount Vinson, which is the highest peak in Antarctica, and they take a small plane from Union Glacier to Mount Vinson. So I have footage of that whole plane trip, leaving Union Glacier, flying to Mount Vinson, landing there, and then they hike up and they have a camp there, and then they climb all the way to the peak of Mount Vinson. They go all the way to the top. And so I've looked at the sun position and all positions on multiple different videos, vloggers and bloggers. Some of these channels on YouTube are bigger. Some of them are smaller. Some of them only have like 500 subscribers or maybe 1,000. Other ones were a little bigger. Maybe they had I think the biggest one maybe had 1 or 2 million with this one vlogger, but a lot of them are kind of smaller channels. So yeah, there's a lot of footage of that trip. And when Jaren and Whitsitt, when they were there, and Duffy and all those guys, I was expecting to see something consistent with all the other Union Glacier footage I've seen, and it was consistent. So, in terms of what the other footage of other people taking the trip.
But they didn't bring anything back. They didn't bring any video evidence.
I'm just saying, like, remember when Jaron first got there and he did a live stream and he was just walking around Union Glacier? It's exactly the way all the other footage of Union Glacier looks that I've found from throughout the years from all kinds of other sources, is what I'm saying. So
Yeah,
when
but
he
they
was
didn't
first
even bring
doing
back
that.
any, flat Earth side evidence, if you like. So that's all been left, and that it's just the Globers videos, and well, we can't trust them because they're Globers. But they didn't even bring anything. They were caught off. Amazed that they had nothing together. I mean, they say it was about weight and couldn't carry enough stuff, but they didn't have any. They weren't that organized as far as making videos or documenting that journey. Other than,
So I mean, at least like,
strapping
at least from what's
GoPro
publicly
to
kind of
Jaron.
known about it, at least from what's publicly known, they both don't have a lot of extra funds to put into it. They were asked to, or this whole trip, whatever the nature of it is, why they ended up on, they're on it and all that. Jaron did a GoFundMe. He raised, what was it, $3,000 or something. So Jaron got $3,000. So he was able to get some of his cameras and stuff. And he had a GoFundMe site and all that. And he explained it. And then Witsit, like, was saying on a live stream before he went that he was really tight on funds and maybe, almost couldn't do it, but he probably could. He probably still could. He was even saying on that live stream something to like, he's like, well, if I'm tight on money or something, Jaron could, and Jaron was like, I got you if you need that or whatever. So, and then Witsit did like a last minute GoFundMe thing where I don't know how much he raised. Was it maybe 1,500? I'm guessing. I'm not sure. Maybe 1,000. I don't want to say a number. I'm not sure. But Witsit did like a last minute GoFundMe thing. So he got some equipment. And then, I don't think either of them brought back a full 24-hour sun footage of the sun. I guess the only one was Jaron, and you guys heard about his files got corrupted? Jaron's 24-hour sun footage? You guys know about that?
Yeah, I heard about that.
No, I haven't heard about that.
Hey, ElderBear, has he released it? Do you know? Like the 85% or whatever 80, 90%. Did he release it yet?
I don't know whose responsibility it was to finance the trip, whether it was on their shoulders or the community was going to support them or not. I know Witsit said, he had to, I don't know, he had $150,000 worth of crypto trading that he'd got to put to one side or lose money on or something. But, if the flat earthers, for that flat earth side, they had at least had their own flat earth sourced video to either support their position or not. I mean, they don't even have that. So, they're kind of a bit of a loss as far as that goes because they can only rely on the globe evidence.
No, I hear you, dude. It's definitely the underdogs, as it were. But the thing is, the truth is, the Earth does not have the sphericity. So I mean, those guys are right. Even though you're right, they didn't really have all kinds of equipment, or they weren't able to really do too much more. Duffy had the money, so he had the drones and the other stuff. That does seem to be the case.
They should just put it on credit. They should just put it on credit and returned it after the trip. If they didn't have the funds.